Yep. You're reading this correctly. The titular article is first. Now, let's remember what happens. There was supposed to be a trip to Israel. They wanted to go to Israel. They, meaning Ocasio-Cortez and her cavalcade of idiots, her axis of stupid, what the media is so lovingly calling the squad. 4 women who every time they open their mouths, some degree of stupid just tumbles out in just word salad. Oh, well, they're at it again. Devil's Tower is also a well-known point of entry for U.S. us folks, let's say, out of town. Yeah. So, okay, first, there was a trip scheduled. Okay, this is, a lot of people don't realize it, but I've been keeping an eye on this. The 4 of them wanted to go. Okay? At first, Netanyahu himself, without any request from Trump, didn't want any of the 4 of them. And by 4, I mean Presley, along with Ocasio-Cortez, Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. None of the 4 he wanted touching foot in Israeli soil. None of the 4. He changed his mind and welcomed them all in. And then at Trump's behest, or request, he is now barring Tlaib and Ilhan Omar from coming through Israel in order to get to the West Bank. Because remember, these 2 want to go to the West Bank to see what the conditions look like. Let's be realistic. Let's just be realistic. With their ideology and the lens that they are looking at the current administration as well as Netanyahu through, and the whole Israel situation, before we get into the fact that they're anti-Semitic, they're not going there to get the big picture as to what is happening. They're going there to confirm their own biases. Thank you for the host, Cat Scratch. They're going there to confirm their own biases. They're not going there to see, what's going on. They're not going there to see if the oppression they keep, quote unquote, hearing about is actually happening, or, how bad or good the situation is. They're going there to confirm what they, in their mind, perceive as something they already know. And once you go somewhere to go see something in that particular mindset, nothing is going to sway you from seeing anything else. And that's what these 2 wanted, okay? So, now they were allowed, everything got overturned, right? Okay. They're allowed to go to the West Bank, but not via Israel. Okay? So travel was open to them to go to the West Bank with a caveat. They could go to the West Bank, but they could not protest against Israel while they were at the West Bank. Okay? They couldn't protest or lead any kind of press conferences or anything of that nature that revolved around any derogatory remarks having to do with Israel. And there's speculation about that, and I'm about to get into the article that you're seeing here, even though I'm going to click on the one that I actually have highlighted in certain passages. This one is too. Speculation is that Tlaib now rejects the visit because she was told that she wasn't allowed to protest or hold anti-Israel press conferences. Okay, that's the scuttlebutt. I tend to agree with the scuttlebutt, because she was all fired up and going to see her old 90-year-old grandmother before she died in the West Bank to see what kind of conditions the woman lived in. And when she was told that she couldn't protest against Israel, all of a sudden, I'm not going. I don't feel like going. I'm not going. I'm not going because it's oppressive. I'm not going, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Tlaib did not outline what the conditions imposed on her visit were. Israeli media reported that she had agreed not to promote boycotts against Israel as part of her request to Israel's foreign ministry. As soon as she was granted permission, she grandstanded and loudly proclaimed she would not visit Israel, Trump wrote on Twitter on Friday evening. Could this possibly have been a setup? Israel acted appropriately. Okay. Now, that is some of the responses. So we're going to get into this. And I do have another thing that I'm going to look at while we're reading this particular article, because I'm going to point something out, because something has been sticking in my craw. Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib said Friday she would not visit her grandmother in the occupied West Bank. Despite being granted an Israeli permit on humanitarian grounds, saying Israelis' oppressive conditions aimed to humiliate her. Because she was told and she agreed not to advocate boycotts? Is that the oppressive thing? Israel barred Tlaib and another Democrat, Representative Ilhan Omar, from visiting Jerusalem and West Bank over their support for the international boycott movement following an unprecedented appeal from Donald Trump to deny them entry. And we're going to visit the BDS website in just a moment, because it's very interesting. I don't agree with it, but it's very interesting how they word things on their website. Let's see. But then the Interior Ministry released a letter purportedly signed by Tlaib in which she promised not to advocate boycotts during her visit. That appears to have led to her decision to cancel going altogether. Too many things are lining up here. This is, I think, she meant this to happen. Silencing me me with treatment to make me feel less than is not what she wants for me. It would kill a piece of me that would always stand up against racism and injustice. Talking about her grandmother's heart. Oh, let me appeal to emotion to keep everybody enraged at the one administration that the popular vote didn't vote for. Israeli Interior Minister Ari Deri announced early Friday that Tlaib had requested and been granted permission to enter the West Bank to see relatives. The U.S.-born Tlaib's family immigrated from the West Bank. Deri's office released what it said was Tlaib's request, written on congressional stationery and dated Thursday, in which she said she wanted to visit her grandmother, who was in her 90s. This could be my last opportunity to see her, and I will respect any restrictions and will not promote boycotts against Israel during my visit, she said. Tlaib's office could not immediately be reached for comment on the letter's authenticity. Why? Because you agreed to it? And then upon being called out of the agreement, you decided not to go? Did somebody ask you about that and you decided not to be available for comment? You know, these are things that go through my mind when I read stuff like this. When I won in 2018, I gave the Palestinian people hope that someone will finally speak truth about the inhumane conditions. I can't allow the state of Israel to take away that light by humiliating me, she wrote. Bassam Tlaib, an uncle who lives in the West Bank, expressed support for her decision. Of course. If Rashida's visit to her homeland is under conditions, we reject that. He said, it's Rashida's right as a Palestinian to come and visit her family and country. Some Palestinians were a little disappointed with the letter. Tlaib should have used her platform to highlight Israel's restrictions instead of writing that humiliating letter asking the occupier to treat her as an exception in exchange for abiding by its restrictions. So she caught herself in a catch-22 situation here. Could that be another reason why she decided not to go? Because the people that didn't agree with her letter found the letter? Deri, the Interior Minister, said after the cancellation that her initial request was apparently a provocative request aimed at bashing the state of Israel. That's not, imagine my shock. Apparently her hate for Israel overcomes her love for her grandmother, he tweeted. Nice dig there. Tlaib and Omar are known as supporters of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS, a Palestinian-led global movement. Supporters say the movement is a nonviolent way of protesting Israel's military rule over the occupied territories, but Israel says it claims to delegitimize the state and eventually wipe it off the map. And let me see here. West Bank demographics, because I feel that these are relevant to the story that we just read. They keep saying that it's Israeli occupied. Well, it does have Israelis in it, just not as many not as many Israelis as Palestinians. The total population of the West Bank surpasses 3.2 million. The last census taken in 2007 shows the Palestinian Arab population is 2,345,000, with 389,250 Israelis living in the region, with an additional 375,000 living in East Jerusalem. So there aren't even 1 million Jews living in that particular area. Over 750,000 Palestinians are refugees or descendants of refugees, making up about 30% of the population. The primary religion throughout the West Bank is Muslim, with up to 85% practicing this religion. I'm just going to leave that hanging there. I'll let you think what you want to think in this particular instance. Let's see here. As we go here, directly from BDS's website. Boycott, divestment, sanctions is a Palestinian-led movement for freedom, justice, and equality. BDS upholds the simple principle that Palestinians are entitled to the same rights as the rest of humanity. Gotta love that word, entitled. Israel is occupying and colonizing Palestinian land. We just went over the demographics. Discriminating against Palestinian citizens of Israel and denying Palestinian refugees the right to return to their homes. Inspired by the South African anti-apartheid movement, the BDS call urges actions to pressure Israel to comply with international law. BDS is now a vibrant global movement made up of unions, academic associations, churches, and grassroots movements across the world. 13 years since its launch, BDS is having a major impact and is effectively challenging international support for Israeli apartheid and settler colonialism. Oh, that buzzword, that wonderful buzzword, colonialism. For nearly 70 years, Israel has denied Palestinians their fundamental rights and has refused to comply with international law. Now, listen to the twist. Listen to the spin. Pay attention to the words and how they're put together. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. Israel maintains a regime of settler colonialism, apartheid, and occupation over the Palestinian people. This is only possible because of international support. Governments fail to hold Israel to account, while corporations and institutions across the world help Israel to oppress Palestinians. Because those in power refuse to act to stop this injustice, Palestinian civil society has called for a global citizens' response of solidarity with the Palestinian struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. And what are boycotts, divestment, and sanctions? Let me see if I can get this to fit a little bit better in the window so you guys can see this. So you guys can see all of it. There we go. That should be better. Make it a little bit bigger. Boom. All right, we got this. Boycotts involve withdrawing support from Israel's apartheid regime, complicit Israel supporting cultural and academic institutions, and from all Israeli and international companies engaged in violations of Palestinian human rights. Divestment campaigns urge banks, local councils, churches, pension funds, and universities to withdraw investments from the State of Israel and all Israeli and international companies that sustain Israeli apartheid. Sanctions campaigns pressure governments to fulfill their legal obligations to end Israeli apartheid and not aid or assist its maintenance by banning businesses with illegal Israeli settlements, ending military trade and free trade agreements, as well as suspending Israel's membership in international forums such as UN bodies and FIFA. I'm just going to be quiet here and let all that sink in. Because remember, the article said that BDS was only to drive them what? Out of the West Bank. That does not sound to me like they're just trying to get them out of the West Bank. To me, that sounds like they are trying to financially destroy Israel. To make Israel a memory by taking away any and all capability for Israel to sustain itself economically. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, it could be for somebody else. It sounds something completely different. But, yeah, to me it sounds like they want to completely economically destroy Israel. It's peaceful. I'll give them that. So let me read this passage again now that we have visited the website and read what the website and the movement is about. Tlaib and Omar are known as supporters of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS, a Palestinian-led global movement. Supporters say the movement is a nonviolent way of protesting Israel's military rule over the occupied territories, but Israel says it aims to delegitimize the state and eventually wipe it off the map. Now, I have just read their mission statement, BDS's mission statement, so you tell me who's closer to the truth. The supporters of BDS or Israel? Mine is not to tell you what to think. Mine is just to give you the information and let you draw your own conclusions. Because I know you're rational thinking individuals and you can think for yourselves. Operation Freedom. 64 arrested a human trafficking sting in Fort Bend County during July. And this was here in Texas. Joint investigation conducted local, state, and federal agencies yielded 64 human trafficking-related arrests during the month of July in the Fort Bend County area. A joint investigation conducted by 22 agencies at the local, state, and federal level. They gotta keep. This is the Department of Redundancy Department, y'all. It led to the rescue of 5 adults and 2 juvenile girls, ages 15 to 17. Charges filed in the operation include the promotion of prostitution, compelling prostitution, various narcotics charges, evading fraud, forgery, and failure to identify, according to officials with the Fort Bend County District Attorney's Office. Each offense was linked to human trafficking, officials said. 4 criminal gang members and an active law enforcement officer were among those arrested. Yep, there was an LEO. There was an LEO. And an active law enforcement officer were among those arrested. They're still conducting the investigation, and they're expecting more charges to be filed by the time they finish investigating everything. The Operation Freedom Task Force also worked with social service agencies to assist the trafficking victims who were swept up in the investigation. Officials said the victims were provided with a full array of services that included sexual assault examinations. Fort Bend County prosecutors said the trafficking was detected primarily through the undercover social media stings and called the suspects sophisticated traffickers that groom young children through a variety of online apps. I'm going to put this in bold, and I'm going to put this a little bit bigger because here we go. The grooming process happens on social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. I can't begin to name the number of apps these people are targeting young juveniles as young as 12 all the way up to their teens. These victims come from all kinds of backgrounds. What is common is they're being targeted and recruited through social media. Now, I'm not going to get into how the 12-year-olds shouldn't be on social media anyway because they're supposed to be age-gated. Social media is supposed to be age-gated to 13 and older. We're not going to go there. But we are going to go here. when you raise your children in a hands-off kind of way, when you pride giving your child their privacy to the point where you're not even savvy as to who they're contacting online on social media. When you don't have a communicative relationship with your children to the point where you can walk into the room while they're on their phone or their computer, point to anyone on their friends list and go, who is that? Can I see their profile? And they show it to you without question. There's going to be a problem. We know there are child predators out there. We know there are sex trafficking rings out there. There are prostitution rings. There are child molesters out there. We know in order to recruit these young children that these children have to be groomed. They have to be told how pretty they are. They have to be given gifts. They have to be showered with affection and attention that they're not getting at home. And these children, being children, often of two-income households, and, with parents that are hands-off as far as giving their child their privacy, have no clue what's going on in their children's lives. I've said this on a couple of other streams and probably on this show before, and I'm going to say it again. You have to be a parent to your child. Not a best friend, not a confidant, not somebody to pal around with, a parent. Being a parent means being nosy, wanting to know what your children are into, what they're doing, who their friends are, where they're going, who they're talking to, because they're your children as parents. And as parents, it's your responsibility to keep them safe and know what they're doing. And if, as a parent, you can't handle your child telling you that they hate you because you won't give them privacy, then the problem is yours, not your child's. As parents, we're supposed to be the arbiters of a good moral compass. We're supposed to be protectors, teachers, instillers of self-respect. We're supposed to show our children through our example what an adult is supposed to be. We are supposed to love and nurture our children. And we are supposed to do things with our children that our children don't like. And one of those things is watching their social media like a hawk. And if you aren't ready to do that as a parent, and you already have children, maybe you need to seek some professional help. Because if you're so afraid to discipline your child, if you're so afraid to be nosy in your child's life in order to make sure your child isn't groomed for a sex ring or to be molested, what does that say about you as a parent? You're afraid of a child. That's all I got to say. Next one. China curbs gold imports as trade war heats up. China has severely restricted imports of gold since May in a move that could be aimed at curbing outflows of dollars and bolstering its yuan currency as economic growth slows. The world's second largest economy has cut shipments by some 300 to 500 tons compared with last year, worth $15 to $25 billion at current prices, the sources said, speaking on condition of anonymity because they are not authorized to speak to the media. Now, a lot of people will take a look at this thing that I'm going to put in bold. And they're going to say, okay, why are you reading this on the stream when this isn't a verified source? When it's coming from China, when the reporting is coming from China, When any stories are coming out of a communist or socialist country, you have to expect the speaking on condition of anonymity because they are not authorized to speak to the media for one reason and one reason only. If the government has not cleared them to speak to the media and they're speaking to the media and get found out that they were doing so, more often than not, they're never seen again. Because countries like China don't want anything negative coming out of their country. They don't want anybody knowing what they're doing in their country. And if you're willing to speak to the press about what's going on in a communist or socialist country when you damn well know you're not supposed to be doing that, you're putting yourself in danger of being arrested or killed. Just being realistic. Escalating trade confrontation with the United States has dragged China's pace of growth to the slowest in nearly 3 decades and pressured the yuan to its lowest since 2008. China is the world's biggest importer of gold, sucking in around 1,500 tons of metal worth some $60 billion last year, according to its customs data, equivalent to 1/3 of the world's total supply. Chinese demand for gold jewelry, investment bars, and coins has trebled in the last 2 decades as the country has rapidly become wealthier. Gold reserves, meanwhile, rose 5-fold. Chinese customs figures show it imported 575 tons of gold in the first half of the year, down from the 883 tons in the same period last year. China imported 71 tons, down from 157 in May. In June, the last month for which data was available, the decline was even sharper, with 757 tons shipped instead of the 199 from June of last year. Switzerland, Australia, and Africa. It's the bulk of China's imports. They usually pay for them in dollars. Import quotas by the Chinese Central Bank. Either quotas have been curtailed or not granted at all for several months. Either or has not been confirmed. I think China is trying to keep this hush-hush, but now that this is leaked, we may have more information coming out. The Chinese Central Bank did not respond to a written request for comment. Of course not. Maybe this is the speculative point of this article, so I will point out that they are speculating. Maybe it'll help limit the amount of money leaving the country amid a plunge in the value of the yuan. In other words, they're trying to do this to stop the drop of the value of the yuan and hopefully make the yuan rise in value again. Beijing has previously taken steps to curb capital outflows when its currency weakened, such as squeezing the supply of offshore yuan, clamping down on import invoicing, and encouraging banks to send home dollars held overseas. They've restricted gold import quotas before, but not to this unprecedented degree. The yuan has sunk more than 10% against the dollar since early last year, and the central bank this month allowed it to slide below the key threshold of 7 per dollar for the first time in more than a decade. So that gets to hang up there. So obviously, it is now below the 7 yuan per dollar threshold. So we're going to see how it develops from there. And the 9th one, you know how Trump wanted to do the third country asylum rule to kind of curtail asylum seekers? Well, here you go. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled Friday that an earlier injunction on the Trump administration's third country asylum rule, which barred migrants from asylum in the U.S. if they did not first apply for protection in a country they traveled through, can only be applied within the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit is located along the West Coast. It envelops the Mexico border, U.S.-Mexico border states of California and Arizona. That means that this decision will effectively block, at least for now, most Central Americans who cross into the U.S. legally or illegally in Mexico or Texas from asylum. Okay, many of those waiting, and let me see here. This is the big picture. Trump administration has been limiting how many migrants can come through the legal ports of entry on any given day. Yes, he has. Yes, he has. There are around 19,000 migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border who are waiting, and the reason that there are 19,000 is because how many caravans walked over here from last year? What the fuck? How many caravans made it over here from last year to comprise 19,000 people waiting for applications to be processed? 19,000 is a number that we were not prepared to handle. We're not prepared to handle this type of an influx of immigrants. We're not. That's what started the problem. The oversized caravans. Okay? Now, a lot of these people, now that this injunction is, basically been lifted, are looking at not even being allowed to apply for asylum because the third country asylum rule, okay, is basically if you're coming from San Salvador, the first country out of San Salvador, you have to ask for asylum for. If you do not, upon reaching the border of San Salvador and the country to the north, I don't want to guess because I'm fucked as far as geography is concerned. I will admit that. I actually have to look up a map. Let me see. I should have done this before. Let's see here. Maps. All right. All right. Okay. From Guatemala. Okay. If you are leaving, let's say Guatemala. Come on. Quit doing that with the goofy shit. Okay. If you're leaving Guatemala on the way to the United States and you come to the Guatemala-Mexico border, if you do not ask Mexico for asylum, by the time you get to the United States, your Guatemalan ass is not eligible to apply for asylum in the United States. That's how that rule works. Okay? That's how that rule works. Likewise, if you leave Nicaragua and go to Guatemala, as soon as you cross the Guatemala border, if you don't ask the Guatemalan government for asylum, by the time you get to the United States, you're not eligible for asylum. That's what is instituted. That is what is instituted. Because the press isn't going to tell you this. Or they did, and then they buried it because they realized it doesn't fit the narrative they're trying to push. Either way, when these caravans were coming here for asylum, and I say this I say these in air quotes for a reason, Mexico actually offered asylum to the caravan coming from El Salvador and Honduras. They did. Mexico did. Okay? Mexico offered asylum to the caravans. They refused Mexican asylum. They refused it. When they were asked why they were going to the United States in order to seek asylum, and I'm going to put the map up here so you can see the map. When they were asked why they wanted to seek asylum in the United States, they were told the answers were for economic reasons. They were looking for jobs and better opportunities. That was the majority of the answers given when they were asked why they were going to the United States to ask for asylum. I don't care what the mainstream media tells you. Economic reasons, better jobs, and better opportunities are not 3 criteria that qualify you for asylum in the United States of America. They're coming here for jobs, and they don't want to come here legally. They're going to apply for asylum. Now, they can apply for asylum now only if from Honduras or Guatemala they stop at Mexico and ask for asylum. And Mexico says no. And then they're eligible to ask for asylum in the United States. They can't just tromp through Mexico and get to the United States and ask for asylum without asking Mexico for asylum first. Because, no, honey, that don't work. And even if they were to abide by the third country rule that is now going to be upheld by the Third Circuit Court, it's a very small percentage of people that actually qualify for asylum. So even if they follow the rules, even if they do what they need to do, even if they have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed, there's still a chance that they won't receive asylum in the United States because we don't grant it to everyone who applies. So watching that unfold is going to be a shit show. All right, on to the sciencey stuff. And that's another video down. If you liked it, there's this. If you didn't like it, there's that. There's a subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet. If you're not sure, there's more content you can watch before you make that all-powerful decision of clicking the red bell and making it go dark. There's also a bell that's just about as fickle as a pregnant woman in a candy aisle when she's got a craving or she's hungry. And because it only works whenever it feels like it. But the bell's there. In the description below is all the ways that you can support this channel, as well as links to blogs and other channels and so on and so forth. So, until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.